Hello there, Vic Benedict here. We're playing Ninja Gaiden 2 Black, and this is my Master Ninja difficulty guide and walkthrough. We're currently on Chapter 5 of 17. It is entitled The Shrine Maiden's Battle. So this is the first of the three female chapters in the game, and while there are some difficult fights in this chapter, Momiji, of the three females, I think she is the most capable of them. But that's not going to mean that you won't run into rough things as you're going through this, particularly if you are new to the game. Just remember that you can do aerial charges with Momiji. You can do aerial UTs specifically. If you have one or two essence, it will do an ET or a UT depending on what you have. The only thing you need to be aware of with those is that they're not without their risks. Now, what I mean by that is if you are going for an aerial charge, sometimes she can whiff, and if you whiff, you're completely vulnerable. So you're going to have to definitely be careful about that. I think that there are two challenging fights in this. Now, I've done this so many times that I'm more familiar with the Tengus than the average person that's coming through this game for the first time. So that means that you're going to have to do a fair amount of struggling while you're doing this, because that struggle is only natural, and don't feel bad if you are struggling. Also, her Izuna Drop is XYXXXY. The Izuna Drop for Ryu, it's listed as XYXXXXY, and then with Ayane, I'm not sure, but it's something like XY and then 5X inputs followed by Y. If it's not 5, maybe it's 4. I think it is 5 though, but when we get to her chapter later in the walkthrough, I'll definitely remind you what it is exactly. But she can do the guillotine throw. She can also do an aerial Izuna Drop. You know how with Ryu, if you do a jumping XY attack, she can do the same thing, although hers doesn't work as well. And I think it has to do with you need to be very precise when you are doing that move. I usually don't like to risk it, to be honest. And this is the really hard fight that I was talking about. So if you can't get these mages off you, then I would use Nimpo on them. The Nimpo works really well on the Tengus. The only problem there is that you might want to save the Nimpo for either this fight or the fight past the first save point, the fight that you get access to the store on. And once we do get the Tengus, the first Tengu, you don't get a checkpoint. So it's not that he's difficult, and he is difficult. It's just that with no checkpoint coming off this really difficult fight here, it's one of those situations of it being really intimidating, especially if you are a new player. So I'm going to try to get new players through this hopefully as painlessly as possible. But I had to drop Nimpo there. I think just for the iframes, I was really vulnerable right there. Now, I don't use the Nimpo on the Tengu fight, and I used it once on the double Tengu fight at the end of the chapter, because I found that with my experience level, and I'm not talking about skill level, I'm just talking about my experience level with the Tengus, I found that it's not really necessary to use the Nimpo on the Tengus, but it does good damage. So if you need to compensate for a lack of experience / skill, just deal with the Tengus as much as possible, and then just drop Nimpo on them if you have to, because it does a significant amount of damage to them. So here he is right here. The best move to do on the Tengu is forward Y. Now I don't think I've addressed the forward Y input. There's not enough time to talk about it on this fight, but I'll talk about it after we do this fight perhaps. So what they do is they fly up, you evade away, and then you evade back towards him if he's not close enough to you. If he is, just go in for your forward Y with this weapon. If this forward Y does a good amount of damage, it's steady, it doesn't leave you too vulnerable. It's just a quick chop that you can do as many times as it'll let you, basically. But you can also parry this guy's attacks, the ones that don't guard break you, of course. I'm not at that particular level where I'm doing parries, but I've seen a lot of better players than I used parries to their great advantage. I'm not sure if they were what parry they were doing, if it was X or Y, but they were doing a really terrific job of counterattacking and dealing really good damage off of a parry. And of course, just always be alert for anytime you suspect that he's going to grab you. It's a pretty obvious tell when they go in for it. But you also can use UTs, but it's risky to use them. And he might block the entire sequence of a UT as well. So it's not always easy to get off a UT on him. And then you never know if he's just going to block the whole combo. But sometimes he lets you. And there's an item. Oh, I picked up the item. There was an item later in this next fight, not with the dragons, but that I missed an item on. But oh, it's in this footage. Yes, it is in this footage. The footage I had 2 successful runs of the next fight, and I decided to leave the fight in. That was me not missing the item, just so that might prevent you from not missing it. Okay, so kill the 2 dragons, and what I would recommend is after you do this fight in here with those 2 dragons, go back and save it, because if you're anything like me, you're going to struggle on this fight over here, and the best thing to do is to just do the run back from the save point to here without having to clear the dragons every time. So definitely save it after those dragons. Down here you've got 3 Grey Ninja, and then once you kill the last Grey Ninja over here, you'll have the archer rushing at you. So the unfortunate thing as well is that even if you do a lot of UTs over here, you're probably only going to be able to buy one thing from the store. And what I would recommend that one thing to be is a grains. If you would prefer to buy a Devil's Way mushroom, pick that up. So here's a grains there, right? And then the thing that we just did, that's the first part of the fight, and it's not challenging. But this next part is extremely challenging. It's almost asking too much of the player and what you have to work with. Now, of course, there are a ton of better players than I, and they can just slice and dice this fight up in a really skillful way and make it look easy. But for me, and I think for most people, they would find that this fight is not easy whatsoever. You know, it's easier for people that are veterans. And while I've played this game many, many times, I don't think that I would qualify myself as a veteran. I'm a veteran in how many times I've played the game, not in really my skill level. So I decided over here, you really need to get rid of the mages. The mages are the biggest problem. Anytime you're one of these female characters, they're incredibly deadly. So I think there's about 2. There might be 3 mages, but however many they are, try to deal with them first. You can guillotine throw to stun them and then go in for an Izuna Drop like I did there. That will kill him every time. But yeah, the mages have to go. And the reason I say it's too much of an ask here is simply because there's so much coming at you. There's so many things exploding all around you. The water effects get in your way. It's hard to see through the smoke. You know, you've got a camera that is inferior to the camera on Sigma 2 as far as the way that it compensates for like where the fight is contained at any one given time. If you run out of where that fight is seemingly contained, the camera can pull back and focus on the enemies rather than where you want to go, and it can really thwart you and cause you to be really confused while you're doing this. So if you want to, you can just go back and forth and do charges, but again, escaping these big hordes of enemies is difficult. You might want to keep anybody who is delimbed for the moment. And the reason for that is because, you know, if they are delimbed, they're going to be moving around slower, and that will give you a chance to focus on the enemies that are faster, and and then slow them down. I'm not sure if it's a better idea to fight everybody up here or not. I just like to run around and see what I can get at any given time. Yeah, you never want to parry that cartwheel attack that these guys do unless you really want to be risky. And in the course of this video, I tried not to overuse UTs or to overuse Nimpo. And that just gives you kind of a fail-safe and a way while you're watching the video to say, well, at this point I could have used Nimpo or I could have used UTs, and then that could be your fallback when you're playing, so that you're not going to get the same fight as me, of course. Pick this up. Now, when I get to the save point, I realized that I had forgot to pick that up from the other take. So this take that you're watching now is not going to be reflected in the next save. It's because the fight that I had where I missed it, that's the one where I went and saved it, and I couldn't, do anything about that. I'm not going to restart the chapter for that. But see how we only have 5,000? That's only enough to buy one thing. So I decided to pick up the grains there. But bear in mind, I will have one less Nimpo in my inventory at the save point than I should have had. Now, don't make that mistake if you can avoid it, because the problem now is that I think that Muramasa is misplaced. I think it should have been right next to the save point coming up and giving you more of a chance to accumulate a yellow essence over here so that you can buy something else, possibly. I think it's just a poorly thought out placement of a Muramasa back there, because you can't go back at any point now once the door closes behind you, not even after you get to the save point. So you can only make one small purchase. And then, of course, doing UTs over here for money is absolutely pointless since you're not going to be able to buy anything else for her. Okay, so you have that collection of ninja, and then you just have one more ambush up here. And unfortunately, it is an ambush. You're going to be snuck up on by these guys. So what I would do is at least get off one UT, or at least at the very least one ET on these. That will sever one of them. Hopefully maybe two of them if you're lucky. But what I'm trying to do here is, since money from a UT is not going to do anything for me, I'm going to try to just kill them with arrow attacks, hoping for a red essence drop that I never get. And I never got it on my other take too. That's reflected in the next dragon statue save. Okay, so you need to be really careful about this whole part, because you just did 3 phases of what is arguably the hardest fight in her chapter. Okay, so come up here, save it. And I figured, I'm one short on a Devil Way Mushroom. I am one short also in my key gauge. But I have all the other healing items, and I bought a grains. That should be sufficient. I should not need more than that to do this. And it turns out that I needed far less than that even, because I only used the Nimpo once, and I had the ability to use it up to 4 times, I believe. But I still would try to get a Nimpo drop or 2 from this fight if you are short of any, because they can fill in the gaps of experience and skill versus the Tengus. And the Tengus are a well-designed enemy. It's just that they're very intimidating. So once that fight is done, you have this one to do. This is the second wave of this fight. You've got mages incorporated into this, but it's not as hard because visibility is better. There are no Ayane's Ninja. There's just a couple of mages intersprinkled with these guys. God, did I say intersprinkled? That was not what I wanted to say, but I didn't talk about forward Y either. So forward Y in a 3D game like this, where your position is always dynamic and changing at any given second, forward Y is in reference to where the character is actually looking at. So if the character is literally looking at you from the 6 o'clock position on a figurative clock, then that forward Y would actually be down on the analog plus Y. It just depends on where the character is looking. So when you are inputting your forward Y on the Tengus, make sure that you're noting that figurative clock of where she's facing. Where is she facing? Is it Is she facing 12 o'clock? Then that is up and Y. Is she facing 3 o'clock? Then that would actually be over to the right. So forward Y, it's just a word that's used as a placeholder for lack of no other word that would suffice, really. Because it's just an interchanging thing that happens. So here are the Tengus, and you're always going to have one in the peripheral. To switch your lock-on of them, I press right trigger, but it might be right bumper for you depending on what your control scheme is. I've got the Ninja Gaiden 2 controls tied to my button presses. But this is going to go the way it goes because these guys are going to dictate the fight based on their placement. And you need to be, of course, careful of their grab, going for your forward Ys. If you ever end up with one Tengu in the background that's a little bit too close, either back off the main one that you're doing and lure him over to an easier place to see, or just have him be the next target. You just switch the target. But just evade, forward Y again. And if you can't get that second forward Y, just back off. Okay, here the fight is naturally progressed over here to the red one. And we've got, you always have the problem of them trying to stagger you from kunai. So that's going to be a factor here too. If you are going in for your forward Ys, if you're trying to dodge grabs, if you are getting staggered by the kunai, that's going to sacrifice your ability to adequately do what you need to do, whether it's back off or evade or drop Nimpo. If things are just completely out of your hands and you're overwhelmed in a corner, say, that would be the best time to drop the Nimpo. But I am comfortable enough with these guys to try to get myself in a good spot most of the time. Right now I'm in a pretty bad spot. I have no idea where the other one is, so I'm going to back off. And I was really proud of this fight, actually, as I was with the first encounter with the other one, because they are not as hard as the fights that you're thrown into, the ones that I mentioned. If you can be level-headed about this and realize that it might take some practice. You've got a great checkpoint, though, so if you fail here, just shrug it off for the time being. And I decided to use Nimpo here to down the other one instantly and get a little bit of health. I don't think, like Marbus or Zidonius, sometimes they try to steal those Nimpo that are out. Sorry, not the Nimpo, but any essence that's staggered in the environment, such as like yellow or blues or even reds. A boss like Marbus will suck that up and take it for himself. And fortunately, I don't think these guys do that. Okay, so we're just, we're see, if we didn't dodge right there, that would guard crush us, meaning that we would get our guard broken plus receive a heavy penalty of damage. You receive like nearly all your health gone. That's the type of guard crush we're talking about over here. So he just has a little bit of health left. I'm gonna try to put him down as easily as I can without overextending, and I think that was all it took. Just a little level-headedness, maybe more than a little experience, but anybody can acquire experience. Just put in the time. It doesn't have to be an inordinate amount of time, just a reasonable amount of time. Because, like I say, the checkpoint they start you right at that fight with the Tengu, so there really is no better way to start a fight than that, I wouldn't think. But if you have any further questions, please post them in the comments, and I can help you respond to those and give you advice that I have. It's not all the advice in the world, but it's advice enough to get you through it. And believe me, I know how hard that fight is. This whole chapter, I know how hard it goes on, your first or second attempt at playing the game. It's not easy. But bear in mind, I've done, 3 or 4 guides for this walkthrough, many other playthroughs off camera, so I'm very familiar with it. And that is about it. Sorry, I've talking overly long here for these chapters, but I think it needed to be addressed in that manner, and needed to have my breadth of experience explained, as far as my level of suffering based on another person's level of suffering, if they had different experience levels and skill levels. Okay, so the Shrine Maiden's battle is finished. The next chapter will blessedly be a continuation of Ryu's chapter. It is, if memory serves, chapter 6 will be the Aqua Capital. And until I see you again, please continue to take care, will you? Thank you very much, and take good care.